It's time for your next favorite episode of the Integratedness Podcast with Jason and Jolene.
Oh, yeah, eh?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's time for the next favorite episode. We said enough of that. I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene.
And we were just referencing Fargo because why not?
Yeah, what made us think about that? But anyways, he says, have you seen Fargo? And I was like, oh, yeah, eh? And then we rolled into our next recording here.
This week, we're talking authenticity. And if had we cut that out, it wouldn't have been authentic to who we are.
Yeah, we don't stage shit here. And
No.
I think that is the coolest way we can show up authentically is we have like probably a 4-minute banter back and forth about a topic. And then we just press record and we see what comes out. And that's the funnest part of this, I think, for you guys and us, because nothing is staged. We don't edit things. We don't go back and say, bleep that out, or I didn't like the way my voice sounded. I mean, sometimes you boost my voice because I'm not talking loud enough. Surprising.
That's only because the mic's that much higher.
Yeah, because I'm like always on my fucking tiptoes. Actually, we lowered it this time, and I feel like poor Jason slumped over now.
Shrinking. I'm getting older and shrinking.
But yeah, we've talked about authenticity, but we haven't really zeroed in on like being authentic. And like even when in our lives we felt like we were more or less authentic, or when we intentionally started calling it that, because I think that we are probably a lot more authentic than we give ourselves credit for at times. And we just didn't know. I didn't know what the word was for like most of my life.
It didn't really start becoming a buzzword until like the last few years,
I
I
would
think.
agree.
Like
I
the
would
last
agree.
5 or 6.
Yeah, I would agree. Other than that, it was like, are you being yourself? Are you being fake? Are you pressured by others? Excuse me. Are you feeling or behaving in ways that are out of alignment with you, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
And even
all of that-
alignment's a new word.
Yeah.
Other than cars.
Yeah, right, for sure. Or chiropractic healthcare, right? But essentially, you know, like, are you being you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you being you, Jolene?
Oh, you know what? I should look up. Okay. Jason, you talk while I get my phone and look up authentic.
Okay, we're going to get an actual definition of the word authentic here, people. And in the meantime, I'm just killing time by talking. But I think it's an important question because I know personally, I don't know if you have, Jolene, there's been moments where I've stopped and thought, am I actually behaving like Jason Hewlett should behave right now?
Ooh, I like that.
Right?
Yeah, well, and now that is around like how that's an integrity question.
Yes.
Am I in alignment or consistent with my values and beliefs? And am I able to act out in the way I want to? Because sometimes until you gain total, I don't want to say total control, but most control of your life, you sometimes can't be an authentic expression of yourself, because maybe you're busting at the grind and you're working for this asshole boss because you're just trying to make enough money to buy the house for your wife and your kids so that you can be the person you want to be.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense.
So I always remind people, and this goes back to that alignment episode, season 1 or 2.
This is 1, I think.
About being in alignment is sometimes we have to recognize this is not who I am to the core, but it's who I need to be to get where I want to go.
Yes.
And we all have to do that at stages of our lives, right?
Yeah, that was me at the paper, really, for a good chunk of it.
Okay, authentic, of undisputed origin and genuine. Made or done in the traditional or original way, or in a way that faithfully resembles an original. Oh, that's funny. So made or done in the traditional or original way, which is funny because if you were to look at family patterning and family belief systems, you would think authentic would be then the cookie cutter version of what you were raised with.
You'd think so.
And it is not in terms of what we're talking about.
Not at all.
In existentialist philosophy, this is the one we're waiting for, guys. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Ready? Relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive. That's a funny
What the
word.
fuck is that word? What does that mean?
Purposive, and responsible mode of human life. Okay, here we go. Again, relating to or denoting an emotionally appropriate, significant, purposive, and responsible mode of human life.
Ooh, gong.
Wow. I feel like an authentic badass.
Right?
Because I'm purposive as fuck. That's what next year is going to be. Remember, I was like,
oh, yeah, you were
or
struggling
this year?
with that one.
You're getting this year. Okay.
Yeah, she
we're
already got
recording it last year. Wow.
Wow. Time travel.
Okay. Get in the car, Marty.
We're going back to the future. Anyways.
Okay. So that right there, like you just got a really authentic, excited moment from me, right? But yeah, we were talking about how, like what 2025 is going to look like and all those things. And again, 2 + 2 + 5 is 9, and 9 means ending in the number world, right? So it's endings of cycles and stuff. But purposive as fuck.
I like that.
I'm going to get shirts made up. That could be the next integrateness podcast. Like
Swag?
What do you call that?
Marketing, merchandise.
Kind of logo.
Slogan?
Slogan. Yeah.
Slogan.
That.
Propulsive as fuck.
Purposive as fuck. Okay.
All right.
We digress.
We totally did.
So, when are times in your life nowadays where you are like, you know what? Yeah, I believe I show up really authentically, and this is where it makes a difference, or this is how I know. Good question. I'm going to charge you $150 for that one.
Wow. I think I do it most of the time.
Yeah.
Like I'm not. Like there was a time where I would sugarcoat things I say or hold back on things I was going to do. I don't do that anymore. Sometimes to the detriment of the situation.
Right.
Like my wife's convinced I'm going to hell. I don't believe in hell, so I'm not going there.
Yeah.
But just because
can't go somewhere that don't exist.
Woohoo, what are you going to do about it? But you know what I mean? I'm and I think it comes with like getting older. Then
Does
I just
she
don't
really?
She said that the other day.
Yes.
Well, no, but I said something. It was in jest. It was humor.
Okay.
It's not, but it wasn't appropriate. And she's like, "You're just going to go to hell." And it didn't help. Griffin thought it was fucking hilarious. He was
Right.
laughing his ass off.
She was like, enough is enough, Jason.
Yeah, basically. But that's being me. I have to.
Yeah.
I have to. And I wasn't going to say it. Then I'm like, but then I'm not being true to who I am.
Right.
If I don't say it, even though
Yeah.
it's inappropriate, that's just where I'm at in life.
Yes. Yeah. I like that. For me, where I've noticed my authenticity really almost confirming itself, right? Because I also feel like it's something that I'm like, oh, I'm going to try this on. And I felt like, once I was able to leave my government job, I was able to be more authentic because I was able to show more of me. I could never share anything about my own life. Like most of the time, even when I was pregnant, my clients didn't know I was pregnant, right? Like there's just a different world. So once I moved into private practice and softened a little bit, and then once I started my social media page to help others and have a platform where I could literally, this was my idea in the beginning, is like, oh, I will upload information about these things that I can share with my clients after, so I don't have to use up their one-to-one time sharing it. And I know I can like reuse the content, right? And then it just kind of took off. And people have appreciated it. They've purposely come to see me because of these things. They've joined my workshop and they've been inspired and believed in the process because I authentically represent what I practice what I preach in a sense. And I'm constantly in that cycle. And that has shown up a lot in like my supervision work with master's students and stuff as well. I really authentically express myself as both a professional and a human being in the role as well. And I feel like I've done a pretty good job in all of these areas to be quite transparent and non-judgmental and open the door of like a non-judgmental calling out of all of these things that we do that stand in our own way.
I like that.
Right? Like
Yeah.
I often talk about like, oh yeah, my trouble in receiving love gets me in this place and that. And sometimes I'm like, you got to smarten up, Jolene, or, or like both of us will call ourselves out on these things or be like, oh yeah, when this was happening, like, God, my head would go here or there. And I feel like most of the time that's just what people need to hear to be like, oh good, it's not just me.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't need to know how to put all the fancy stuff on things. I need to know how, when things are broken underneath, how to fix them.
Yes.
Does that make sense? Everyone
sense.
can decorate a fucking room, but not everybody can replace the drywall or fix the flooring or put up the baseboards, right?
Completely.
Yeah.
And it's important. I don't think enough people do know how to do all that when
Yeah.
more people should. And
Yeah.
I think that's why I don't like all I really post to my social media is promoting the stuff I do, but I will post mental health stuff. And I do it not as an attention-seeking thing, but to just put myself out there so other people can say, oh, shit, this guy's going through it too, and that's okay. So if he can do it and can talk about it, so can I, and get the help they need.
Totally.
That's why I do it.
Yeah. And it's kind of one of those things where, like, when you start to live that way, the people who witness you see safety in starting to do that. And it will just kind of trickle out, right?
Yeah.
I often think about that sometimes in the emotional landscape that I allow my children to express and live within, right? Because there is a lot of expression in my home at the end of a day. And, there's 3 different little people, including myself, like dealing with overwhelm in whatever different ways, right? And our home is very open to that. Like, my kids, I don't think would tell you that they feel stifled to express themselves in my presence. In other areas of their life, they do, I think. But, and especially school for kids. Like, they keep their shit together all the time, right? But yeah, it was funny because, of course, we have someone else that lives with us. And I remember having a conversation with him around something. I was like, listen, man, if you're having a hard time, this is the house to do it in. Like, every day you see somebody lose their shit multiple times a day. Like, this is the space where we will sift through that. If things are not going good, then here's your space to dump it and move on. Let us help you shift from whatever,
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And I said, like, I really normalized. I'm like, how many times have you seen people cry here, including myself? Like, this is a safe place for that.
That's awesome.
Like, we don't, we obviously initially, like, I noticed the behavior of my children change a little bit with a guest in there, but that's also a really conflicting thing too, because sometimes you want your kids to be on better behavior with other people, including like when my mom and her partner come over or whatever. And they don't. Like, my kids often, yes, they do. But like, when my kids are being themselves, you know that you're a safe person in their life, right? So even with Kevin and stuff, right? Sometimes I have to remind myself, like, oh yeah, if they're acting out right now, it's because he's just such a part of our landscape now. They don't have to put on a show to impress him if they see him or any of those things. Like, of course they want to, but they also will still be their authentic selves, which is someone who might cry or get mad about something that just happened. And they're not going to stifle it just because someone's there.
Yeah, and kids shouldn't feel like they have to. There's an era when kids did.
For sure. I was raised in that time.
Too. Yeah, don't you dare have a moment.
I'll tell you, as a parent, part of me wishes we were still there.
Right?
Like, fuck, somebody else is here. Like, stop screaming.
Yeah, like, just stop it.
Right? I tell myself all the time. No, I'm just kidding. That's also it, too. Because that's also, I'm like, I'm comfortable being the parent I need to be in that moment. And I'm like, fuck, I hate that I just got angry about this right here in front of these people. But it's also, like... Yeah, I don't want my kids to see me behaving inconsistently just because someone's witnessing it. Like,
no, it's important. Like, I remember because I'd coach, but I'd helped teach Griffin's martial arts class, and it was at the same school that I went to. There's a moment before class, so they're there. He's with one of the other kids. A bunch of the parents are there, plus Sifu and then his son Brian, who'd teach it. And Griffin kept harassing this kid and wouldn't let go of his hands. And the kid's asking him nicely, and Griffin's not doing it. I'm like, Griffin, so I came up and said, let go of his hands, and Griffin just looked at me and kind of laughed. So I grabbed his hands, I unpried them from this kid, I grabbed him, I dragged him across the entire gym to a quiet corner. Sifu and Brian just kind of laughed and left the room so that I could have my moment, and I just reamed him out about like personal space and less listening and blah, blah. But I didn't care. There was like 30 people watching. Yeah. You can't have that moment, especially raising children.
Yeah, because they will look for that inconsistency and then start creating that. And they'll find those moments to be like, Mom won't do anything because we're in the grocery store, and Mom won't this, right? So, and of course, you're going to gauge things, and we don't want to shame, and there's all of those things. But it is like, where do we feel like we can be an authentic expression of ourselves, and where do we don't because of negative consequences? Our work, different places where we're fitting in social circles, right? And again, what is our authentic self, right? Because I think we try on multiple different versions of ourselves to get there. And people do this in my course, because we look through our teen years and they're like, well, I thought that I was, but now that I look back, like, I can see where I was stifled. And I said, but at that time, based on how much of you knew, you probably were an authentic expression of that part of yourself. You didn't know or uncover the other 70% yet, but based on who you were then, you might have been.
You're not going to be any different. You don't know any different.
Yeah.
You're just doing, and you're right. And you go through these stages in life. You try on these different uniforms, whatever you want to refer to, different hats. till you get to where you are. And you need to go through a process of doing that, plus seeing what worked, what didn't, what felt right, what didn't, and how people responded.
Yes.
And how you responded to their responses, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I think for the first parts of our lives where we're establishing things and like getting through different institutions, we don't have control over who we can be. Remember, I told you before, when you have to kind of do the things to get to the life that you're really wanting, there are times you got to just bear down. You got to deal with the shitty teacher in the classroom, or the job that you hate, or living in the community you don't want to live in just so that you can get the promotion to live in the one you want to live in, right? All those things. That doesn't mean you're not being authentic. Go back and connect to your deepest value of why you're enduring that, right? And that's what you're being true to.
And that's important.
Yeah, in my workshop, I'll have those conversations. People will throw out some of these ideas like, oh, you know, I feel bad or this or that, or even in partnerships that they knew weren't good. What were you staying true to? What parts of you were being authentic? Often it's our loyalty. Often it is our commitment. Often it is a simple concept of keeping our fucking word.
Yeah, and that can be one of the hardest things to do, even when you don't want to. But
with one of my clients who is a veteran, he made an oath to this country, and there is multiple areas where he's conflicted in that. And it's funny because I remember having my eyes opened up, and I know I've talked about this in a previous episode, but it's not that he was an anti-vaxxer. He was an anti-non-choice. And he said, I fought for the freedom of all of the people in this country, and this country has betrayed me and the rest of us by forcing something on us. So it wasn't that he was an anti-vaxxer. It was that he hated that was forced on people, and the freedom of choice that he fought for was blatantly disrespected. And essentially, pretty much his role being a soldier felt like it was deemed pointless if they were just going to override that.
Yes,
Isn't that wild?
Valid point.
But all you would see from the outside is an angry anti-vaxxer until you talked about the depth. So go down and ask yourself, if I feel like I'm not being authentic, what am I being authentic to?
Yeah, I like that.
Maybe it's your friendship. Maybe it's you're so committed to loyalty in your friendship. You're authentic to that trait of loyalty that you being you in that, or you not being you in that connection to keep the connection is what you were feeding.
Oh, yeah. No,
it's
very, very true. And that's when life becomes complicated. Especially if you figured out like your values. Like that's something Alicia and I did like 6 years ago, is went through and figured out my 10 core values. Once you have those 10 core values, it does simplify things a lot, but it's when two of those values come in conflict with each other that you get into sticky situations. Like, I had to let a friend go, which was hard. I'm not going to say which one. Yeah. Because my loyalty to that friend of decades was very strong. But when I realized certain behaviors that they displayed and how they treated other people, and even sometimes how they've treated me in the past, I'm like, I'm not okay with that.
Totally.
Right? And I've hit a point in life where it's like, I can't continue on being okay with that out of loyalty.
And often that's a choosing you over others. Yeah. And that's very conflicting
It's very conflicting too, right?
But that is sort of what we're evolving into, is how do we start living a life where we're choosing for us? Because if we're not choosing for us, we're essentially just living our life for other people, right? And that's why when we talk about people-pleasing wounds and things like that, those are the ones that come out. If you're not choosing for you, then you're essentially here to live your life for other people.
And that's not
and they're not
healthy.
really benefiting from that.
And most of them don't even realize that. They don't
even know.
And they don't care.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. So even, looking at different places where how authentic are we being, are there people we can be more authentic with? And I like how you said, like, once you establish your core values, it's easier to be in alignment with that version of you and what your expression of you is. Which brings us to like the beginning of the year and how, I've always picked like a core desired state to be in. It reminds me of that. Like I find one thing to focus in on, and then like being purposive as fuck and which is really just intentional, right?
Basically.
But like, I've picked different things like connection and peace and things like that. And then every decision or every scenario in your life, you could say, does this move me closer or farther away from peace? Does this move me closer or farther away from connection? And, there are times you're going to move farther away because that's the way the cards are dealt that time. And then you just have to make sure that you redirect back to getting closer to it. So you could ask yourself, does this decision, does this position, does this relationship, does this, activity bring me closer to Jolene or Jason? Or does it bring me farther away from myself? Does it disconnect me from myself?
Yeah.
Like, that could be a really cool way that you could play around with the idea of being authentic. Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. And if you don't know, like you might be like, I don't know what my fucking authentic version of myself is, because so many people demand so many things of me. My life is very much like that, right? I have all these different roles that I play and stuff. And I have a different version of authenticity in each one. And I've talked about this before in, I think, the roles episode, where it doesn't change who I am. It just changes the outfit that I wear, but I'm still Jolene underneath all of that. But yeah, who I show up with here is going to be different. Even my social media, like my personal page is like filled with all my kids and shit like that. My business page is going to see less of my family life and more of professional version of me and stuff, right? And then again, like I have certain friends that get different versions of me. Some have like never seen the spiritual version of me, because that friendship was like determined long before that version of me was really expressed. So they just got a different version of me.
But still the same person.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. And same for yourself, right?
Oh,
like the
big time.
people in your writing world get a very different Jason than landscaping Jason.
Quite.
Right?
And a lot of people don't get landscaping Jason.
Totally. Totally. I gotta say though, I saw running Jason the other day and I was like, what the fuck's going on here, man? It was so cold out and you were
freezing.
running and I was like, Jay, like honking at you in my warm car. And
It's a
I
good
was like,
time to go running, man.
good job, Jay.
Thank you.
Good job. The old antique car is still going.
Still goes.
You know, you're not supposed to drive them in the cold.
Yeah, I know, right? I just started up and let it run for 10 minutes before I actually run going.
Pour some gas in the carb.
Yeah, and then go fast.
That's funny.
Have you ever, because like we talked about, we go through different stages of who we are to get to where we are.
Yeah.
Have you ever tried trying on one of those old versions for a bit to see how it worked?
Yeah, it's funny. I have to be drunk to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really funny because I just desire it less. And I definitely have friendships where it was more like party version of me or, those kind. And even when I gather with those friends, like I often, like we went to like a craft night the other night and I was like a lot of them were drinking and I was like, there was maybe 3 of us who didn't drink because like I just don't reach for it these days. So that's why it'll be funny, like the drunk version of me, right? Not the same as like 7 gin and tonic Jolene a couple of years ago, right? Yeah. So just looking at different things like that. And yeah, I have come to a place where I know that happens in those scenarios and I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I remember when I felt awkward, I actually felt othered. It was weird. I was like, I don't fit here anymore. And all of my wounds of like being rejected or not included definitely would have sparked a little bit more. And I grieved not feeling the same way around those pockets of people that I used to. But I was also like, why would you ever go back there, Jolene? Like, look at what your life is now. And it makes complete sense that this isn't the version of you anymore, right? Like
Totally.
who I would have been there, right?
I found too, I
Yeah.
went through a whole era in life where I just wear like funky shirts. They're just different with slogans and sayings and all that. And I tried that again a while ago and it felt wrong. Like it felt like I was pretending. It was just put the shirt on and wear it for a while. I was like, this isn't right anymore.
Jason, okay. That was probably during a time where you had less authentic expression from yourself and you were more robotic in your interactions in the world. So your expression came from, and I think that's what teen years is.
Yeah.
We don't get to truly express ourselves authentically because we still go home to our parents' house. We still stay within the constraints of the school system.
Yeah.
We still have all these rules.
Yeah, the extracurricular
We're not
activity
old
or
enough
whatever.
to do certain things, whatever. Once you have freedom over all of that, you can wear the gray shirt because here you're expressing yourself here. You're able to do what you want with your wife and your kid, and you're able to express yourself in your books and the way that you run your career and your household.
Yeah, it was fascinating. It was fascinating to do it because it's like, it feels like I'm really trying too hard now. You know what I mean? Like it was interesting. It was really interesting.
That's really cool. And, I could probably say the same about myself. I definitely know that there were times like I would change my hair every time I'd go to the hairdresser. I was always finding a new expression of myself, right? And now I definitely stay with similar kind of things, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I like that you noticed that because that is it, right? That's one of our most obvious ways of expressing ourselves is like how we physically leave the house.
Yep. Huge. Yeah. It's huge. Well, it's because that's the first thing people see.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So
being authentic.
Being authentic. Being yourself. Are you who you say you are?
Is that a song?
I don't know, but it could be now.
It sounded like it. Say who you are. Yeah,
Yeah,
motherfucker.
bitch.
Yeah, whatever.
And that is the other thing you will always get is like these weird endings. So when I was listening to one of our episodes, I was like dying at the end because we randomly started quoting Rick James.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, where did that come from? And this is how you know that like we're not planning anything, guys. And you are getting the most unfiltered shit that comes out. Like I always tell people when they're like, and they're surprised at what I've said, I was like, you have no idea. I only express about 10% of what happens inside this head. Like, so if that one shocked you, trust me, there's plenty more in there.
Lots.
So there you go,
more.
folks.
All right.
We are committed to being the most authentic expression of ourselves for the sake of this podcast and the lives we walk forward in.
And being propulsive as fuck.
Propulsive as fuck.
So until next week, I'm Jason.
And I'm Jolene.
And I'm Rick James, bitch.